Yo, what is up guys, it's Ghost here, and in today's video I want to go over 5 things the next Battlefield absolutely must have if it is to be successful. So the other day I made a video on 5 things that I think should be left out of the next Battlefield game, and there we kind of went over some of the smaller things, some gadgets and things like that that I didn't think really fit in the Battlefield universe, and a lot of people therefore left some comments saying, Ghost, what about the specialist system? How could you not want to leave out the specialists? I personally do want to leave out the specialists, so in this video we are going to be concentrating on features that the game absolutely must have that are a bit larger and more impactful, let's say. Before we begin though, as always, if you guys do enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content here on the channel. Current goal is 47,000 subs. As always, your guys' support is a massive help, so cheers for that. Okay, number 1 here on my list, and these aren't in a particular order, but I would say that this is one of the bigger things, is a server browser, and we're going to give a special mention afterwards to the platoon system from Battlefield 4. So I think everybody who plays Battlefield 2042 has already identified a lot of the problems with the lack of a server browser. You end up playing the same maps again and again on rotation. You know, you can't join a server and go from one map to another, knowing which map is coming next, and have kind of an expected experience, right? If you want to go and play one map all day, every day, you can do that. You can find a server for that, and you can go in there. If you want to go in a server that has vehicles disabled, you're able to do that as well. And I think that's what DICE were trying to get at with the implementation of Portal, but Portal seems to have largely failed. It's mostly filled with hardcore 10,000% damage servers, which, you know, are mostly there for XP farming and unlock farming, and I've quite frankly never really understood why people even enjoy them. But that's a topic for a whole nother video. But the main thing that I really miss from having a server browser is that it just brings a real feel of community. I think everybody has their favorite servers that they favor, and they sort of go in there day after day, jump in that same server. They think, hey, you know, I had a great time in this particular server yesterday, why don't I just jump in there again today? And lo and behold, you might run into a few players that you remember from yesterday. Maybe you didn't speak to them, maybe you didn't talk to them, but you know, you just remember killing that person, or you remember that that guy's been on your squad a few times, and maybe over repeatedly playing within that server, you do get to talking with that person in your squad, and you actually start to build some meaningful social connections with people there, and I think that is by far and above one of the most important things in gaming. Furthermore, I really think they should implement back the platoon system. This was a fantastic place to bring a community together. Me personally, as a big Battlefield 4 player and somebody who was making content on YouTube at the time on that game, I had my own Ghostgaming platoon, right? And what that meant is I could invite something like 200 players from my channel. Those people could then see when other people within the platoon were online, what server they were playing in, and they could join up. So that meant I was able to play with you guys without having to add every single one of you to my friends list, which is currently the only way that we can actually play together. So that's just one example, of course, of how platoons were useful in a case like mine. But for a lot of people, I think, you know, they made a platoon with a group of friends, or they made a platoon to people who were very dedicated in a specific area of Battlefield, like flying the jets, for example. There was definitely a few different platoons that I was a part of dedicated to that sort of thing, and that was the beauty of it, is that you could be part of multiple platoons at the same time. Everybody had like a rank in the platoons. It was great. I'm sure these features were probably in Battlefield 1 and 5. I'm banging on a lot about Battlefield 4 at the moment because that's like the last game that I really played. But whatever the implementation, some sort of a community feature built around the game absolutely needs to be there. Moving on, the next feature the next Battlefield game absolutely needs is more maps. And I suppose that's not a feature, but I'm talking more content overall, more regular content drops. If you compare Battlefield to Call of Duty, now you may hate Call of Duty with all of your being, but if you compare the amount of content that that game puts out compared to Battlefield, it is absolutely insane. There is just a serious content drought right now in Season 5. It really feels like in the previous seasons, DICE were kind of getting busy fixing the game, they were redoing the older maps, they were bringing in some new stuff, and even though content was pretty sparse, it felt like the game was going places and the player base was increasing. Now it sort of feels like the opposite. This is pretty much the game that we're gonna have until it's the end of content, and Season 5's content really, whilst it was good, hasn't really been enough to keep players engaged for the long term. Anyway you look, one of the biggest complaints Battlefield 2042 is receiving is a lack of content. I don't know if they should go down the Battle Pass route and the live season route again. I would like to see them go back to the premium model personally, whilst this did technically split the player base by giving some people who purchased the DLCs access to those maps and others not. I still felt that this was a better system than what we have now with the live service. Of course, I very much doubt that EA and DICE are going to go down that road because live service is just kind of in at the moment. That's what's trendy and that's what's selling, I guess. But whatever way they do it, whether it's by going back to the older premium DLC model or by sticking to the live service, they really massively need to up the amount of content that they're putting out for the game. Coming in at number 3, we have more destruction. I still remember looking back to this little demo here, which looked like an entire skyscraper falling down, and I thought that was the level of destruction that was going to be in Battlefield 2042. This was way before the game was even announced or even any of those leaks came out. I thought we were going to get some insane amounts of destruction. It was going to be far above and beyond what any Battlefield game had done before. And unfortunately, the reality of destruction in Battlefield 2042 is that it's just pretty lackluster and bare bones and really comparable to most other shooters out there these days. And I think that one of the main iconic parts of the Battlefield franchise and what sets it apart from other franchises is that destruction. That is like one of the key elements when you think of a Battlefield game. Now, as for these large set pieces, think of things like the rocket blowing up on Orbital, or if you go back to Battlefield 4, the Levolution event of the tower on Siege of Shanghai. I think that those are pretty cool. They do get a little bit old once you've seen them a few times. It's like, oh yeah, cool, that's happening for like the 10th time or the 100th time or the 1000th time that you've seen it. And I think considering the amount of time it takes for them to implement those features into a map and those massive spectacles, maybe it just isn't worth it. The kind of destruction I would like to see is more akin to Bad Company 2. And in fact, when I go back and play some of these maps in Portal or in the weekly rotations like we've been having with Control recently, when I play Arica Harbour and I see buildings being fully destructible and being turned to rubble, I actually forget that that's possible in 2042. Sometimes I'll be in one of those buildings, the building collapses on top of me, I get squished, and I'm like, oh right, that's because it's a Bad Company 2 map, and that was actually possible in that game. Why are things like this not happening in every map in 2042? Even if you think back to Battlefield 3, we had like rubble drops. You didn't destroy maybe the entire building, but you could blow out a huge chunk of one of the upper floors. I'm thinking a map like Sen Crossing here, and you could kill people who were sort of walking by on the pavement down below. Environmental damage, environmental manipulation, if you will, and sort of, thinking a little bit differently about the maps. That's something that's just always been really cool in Battlefield, and Battlefield 2042 completely missed on that front. At number 4, we have gunplay with a little bit of a higher skill gap. For me, Battlefield has traditionally fit into the niche of being realistic, while still arcadey at the same time. It's not Hell Let Loose, it's not Squad, but on the other hand, it's not Call of Duty. And when I originally started playing this franchise, that was kind of the thing that drew me to it. I still remember playing Battlefield 3, and at the time, I hadn't really experienced proper recoil mechanics where you had to pull down on the mouse or on your controller to control the recoil of the weapon. I hadn't experienced sniper rifles where you have to account for the bullet drop, you have to account for bullet travel time. Up until then, most of the shooters I was playing were just like hit scan, or they had versions of these mechanics that were very trivialized. But the way the gunplay works in 2042, where pretty much every gun is like a laser beam, most of the automatic weapons are going to be the best pick in the game, it just feels a little bit too easy. I think most of the previous Battlefield games have had really, really great gunplay. Of course, all of the issues that we've had with like mouse input not being fixed, and now there's this new recoil bug or movement bug with the center of the screen not being synced up. I'm sorry you guys have been watching the Cadwoman or Enders' videos on here. I've decided, I'm not going to cover that because they've already covered it, and I'm sure you guys have seen that. but I am aware of that. So those things have definitely been a detriment to the overall feeling of the gunplay as well, even though they may be bugs. But I really think DICE need to go back to the drawing board a little bit, look at previous games and what worked. Maybe they do need to have a little bit more spread where you do need to burst the weapon and actually have bursting feel good and work properly. They've tried to put bursting into Battlefield 2042, but it just doesn't really feel great because, like so many other things in the game has been designed from the ground up around these certain systems, and then when you start to chop and change some of them, some things work out, like for example the class system with the specialist. That change turned out pretty good. Other changes just don't really feel so great, and that is how I'm experiencing the changes to the spread on the assault rifles at the moment. And finally, coming in at number 5 here, we have more skillful vehicles and a more robust vehicle spawn system. I think a lot of the issue with vehicles in 2042 is that they're just far too easy to use. Pretty much anybody can pick up a Nightbird or a vehicle in this game and go on like a fairly decent kill streak. Let's say, 10 or 15 kills without being highly skilled in the vehicle. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we see players like Ash, players like Silk, who are getting 100+ scores and absolutely destroying lobbies with the vehicles. That never used to be possible in games like Battlefield 4. I mean, okay, yeah, I take that back. You did see, attack helicopter streaks with people getting more than 100 kills, but if you take the jets into consideration, you never saw people getting that many kills. The kills have definitely started to increase in Battlefield 5 and now 2042, and I think it's certainly tied to the casualization, let's say, of the vehicles. Now that said, they do still have to make the vehicles accessible. The average player also has to be able to get into the vehicle and figure out how to fly it, but that means they just need to be more transparent and maybe give some tutorials to players within the game, like in-game tutorials on how vehicles in Battlefield work and how to fly them. I think a classic example of this is Battlefield 4, where I started my channel built on making Battlefield 4 jet tutorials. Nobody knew how to fly the jets because they didn't understand the fundamentals like speed control, and I had to teach them. Whereas in reality, the game should teach you this basic fundamental of how the jets work in the game. There should be a tutorial, how to fly jets. You click on it, you learn some basic, and then you've got like a basic foundation to build off of. I think the other reason that a lot of players have problems with the vehicles is that you can have any vehicle you want in every single map in the game. Yes, there are some slight variations, like take Reclaimed for example, there's no jets in that map, but on the whole, you can pretty much get any vehicle you want, whereas on previous games, the vehicles were balanced on a map-by-map basis, taking into account things like which kind of vehicle is actually going to fit on this map and which kind of vehicle is going to be effective on this map, but also which kind of vehicle is going to be too effective on this map and too good. And maybe, let's leave out that vehicle so the infantry doesn't get farmed too hard. Some classic examples being the fact that on maps like Goldmud Railway, you had every single vehicle in Battlefield 4 available to you, but on some smaller maps like Flood Zone, you got some tanks, and then you got only the scout helicopter. There were no jets, there was no attack helicopter. If we look at a map like Propaganda, we only had ground armor, there was only tanks, absolutely no air vehicles at all there, and it really gave some life and a little bit of identity to each and every map as well. So there it is, guys. There is my little list of 5 of what I deem to be the most important things that the next Battlefield game absolutely needs to have in order to be successful. I have to say, I do find it strange that I'm starting to make these kinds of videos now. Normally these are the types of videos that I will be making once Battlefield 2042's content had completely concluded and we were looking forward to the next Battlefield game. But strangely, I'm not sure how you guys feel, but personally for me, it feels like I'm already sort of there. It feels like Battlefield 2042's content is coming to an end. We haven't heard anything yet about Season 6 except for the fact that it will be going ahead. Nothing in regards to how much content is in there. Are we going to be getting 2 maps instead of the 1 map now that all of the remakes are done and dusted? Except for Hourglass, obviously, which is going to come out soon. I hope to God, please, soon. But yeah, man, I don't know. Things are just getting quite stale, aren't they? Guys, if you enjoyed the video today, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, of course. Have a good one, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.